HOA President Becky Morrison claimed 50 acres of my family's farm belonged to her development. I woke up to bulldozers destroying 4 generations of farmland based on fake legal documents. When police arrived, they found her directing the destruction with a clipboard and designer hard hat. She was arrested immediately. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My family has owned Meadowbrook Farm for 4 generations. 500 acres of the most beautiful farmland you've ever seen, with rolling hills, fertile soil, and a creek that runs right through the middle. My great-grandfather bought this land in 1923 with money he saved working in the cotton mills. He cleared the trees, built the farmhouse, and started growing corn and soybeans. Every generation of my family has worked this land. My grandfather expanded the farm and added cattle. My father modernized the equipment and started growing organic vegetables. When he passed away 2 years ago, he left me everything with one simple instruction: take care of the land and it will take care of you. I'm Mark Thompson, 32 years old, and farming is all I've ever known. I love everything about it: the early mornings, the hard work, the satisfaction of watching crops grow from tiny seeds into food that feeds families. This farm isn't just my business, it's my life. Everything was perfect until Willowbrook Estates decided to build their fancy development right next to my property line. Willowbrook Estates was one of those massive suburban developments with hundreds of identical houses, perfectly manicured lawns, and residents who moved from the city but expected rural life to be as quiet and controlled as their old neighborhoods. The development came with an HOA, and that HOA came with the most dangerous president I've ever encountered, Becky Morrison. Becky was 45 years old, drove a white Range Rover, and wore designer clothes to the grocery store. She had moved from Dallas with her lawyer husband and immediately decided that our peaceful farming community needed her special brand of improvement. The first time I met Becky, I was harvesting corn in the field closest to the new development. It was October and I was working long days to get the crop in before the weather changed. I was driving my combine harvester when I saw a woman in high heels and a business suit standing at my fence line, waving her arms frantically. I shut off the engine and climbed down to see what she wanted. "Are you the owner of this farm?" she demanded before I could even say hello. "Yes ma'am, I'm Mark Thompson. Is there something I can help you with?" Becky looked around my field like she was surveying a disaster area. "This is completely unacceptable. Do you have any idea how much dust and noise your farming activities are creating?" I was confused. "Ma'am, this is a working farm. Farming does involve some dust and noise, especially during harvest season. Well, it needs to stop. My residents paid good money for their homes, and they deserve to enjoy their properties without being subjected to this industrial agriculture disruption." I stared at her for a moment, trying to understand if she was serious. "Are you saying I can't farm my own land?" "I'm saying you need to be more considerate of your neighbors. We have children who can't play outside because of your dust. We have people who work from home who can't concentrate because of your machinery noise. Ma'am, my family has been farming this land for 100 years. Your development has been here for 6 months. Maybe your residents should have considered what it means to live next to an active farm before they bought houses here." Becky's face turned red. "We'll see about that, Mr. Thompson. The Willowbrook Estates HOA has significant influence in this county, and we don't intend to let one selfish farmer ruin the quality of life for hundreds of families." She stomped back to her Range Rover, leaving deep heel marks in my field. I figured that would be the end of it. Becky couldn't possibly think she had any authority over my farm. I was wrong. 3 days later, I found an official-looking letter in my mailbox. It was from the Willowbrook Estates HOA, informing me that my agricultural activities were violating community standards and demanding that I cease all farming operations during weekdays and limit weekend work to 4 hours per day. I called my lawyer, Jim Morrison, who laughed so hard I thought he was having a medical emergency. "Mark, they can't regulate farming on land they don't own. Your property isn't part of their HOA. Just ignore them." So I did. I threw the letter in the trash and continued harvesting my corn. But Becky was just getting started. Over the next month, she launched a campaign of harassment that escalated from annoying to dangerous. She started by filing complaints with every government agency she could find. She reported me to the county for operating heavy machinery without proper permits. The county inspector came out, looked at my equipment, and told me everything was fine. She reported me to the state environmental agency for creating excessive dust pollution. They investigated and found no violations. She reported me to OSHA for unsafe working conditions. The inspector spent half a day walking around my farm and concluded that my operation was actually a model of agricultural safety practices. Every complaint was investigated and dismissed, but dealing with the constant stream of investigators was eating up time I needed for farming. Becky also began organizing her HOA residents to pressure me directly. She held meetings where she explained how my farm was ruining their investment and destroying their children's health. Groups of Willowbrook residents started showing up at my property line during my busiest work days, demanding that I stop using my equipment because the noise was bothering them. Some of them tried to block my field entrances with their cars, claiming I was violating noise ordinances. I had to call the sheriff's department 3 times to get them moved. The harassment got worse when Becky hired a lawyer and threatened to sue me for maintaining a public nuisance. Her lawyer sent me a letter demanding that I either sell my farm to developers or cease all agricultural activities. The letter was completely baseless legally, but defending against a lawsuit would cost me thousands of dollars I needed for farming expenses. I was starting to get really worried. Becky was using the HOA's resources and her residents' money to wage legal warfare against my family farm. She seemed determined to force me off land that had been in my family for 4 generations. Then things took a turn that changed everything. In November, right after I finished my corn harvest, Becky called a special HOA meeting. She didn't invite me, but my neighbor Jake attended and told me what happened. Becky announced that the HOA was taking direct action to solve the farming problem. She had researched property laws and discovered what she claimed was a boundary dispute between my farm and the Willowbrook development. According to Becky, the original survey markers for my property were incorrect, and 50 acres of my farm actually belonged to the HOA common area. She planned to reclaim that land and convert it to green space for the development. Jake said the residents looked uncomfortable with Becky's plan, but none of them spoke up to challenge her. They were all afraid of crossing the woman who controlled their HOA. I immediately called my lawyer Jim, who pulled out the original property deeds and survey records. "Mark, this is insane," he said after reviewing the documents. "Your property boundaries are clearly established and have been for decades. There's no dispute here. If she tries to take your land, she'll be committing theft and trespassing. What should I do?" "Document everything. If she actually tries to take your land, call the police immediately." I set up security cameras around my property and waited to see what Becky would do next. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, I woke up at dawn to the sound of heavy machinery. I looked out my bedroom window and saw the most shocking sight of my life. Becky Morrison was standing in my cornfield directing a crew of construction workers who were operating 2 bulldozers. They were systematically destroying everything in their path: my irrigation system, my fence posts, and the remnants of my corn crop. I threw on clothes and ran outside, my heart pounding with disbelief and rage. "Stop!" I shouted as loud as I could. "This is private property." Becky saw me running toward them and waved the bulldozer operators to continue working. "Mr. Thompson," she called out with a satisfied smile, "we're reclaiming HOA land that has been illegally occupied by your farming operation. This is my land. You're destroying my farm. Actually, according to our research, this 50-acre section belongs to the Willowbrook Estates common area. We have every right to clear it for community use." I watched in horror as the bulldozers continued their destruction. They were tearing up soil that my family had carefully cultivated for generations. They destroyed my irrigation lines, which had cost me $15,000 to install last spring. "Becky, you need to stop this right now. You're committing crimes. This is theft and destruction of property." "I have a court order," she replied, pulling a document from her purse. I grabbed the paper and read it quickly. It wasn't a court order at all. It was some kind of HOA resolution that Becky had written herself, claiming authority over my land. "This isn't a court order. This is just an HOA document that has no legal authority over my property." "We'll let the courts decide that," Becky said. "In the meantime, we're proceeding with land reclamation." That's when I pulled out my phone and called 911. "This is Mark Thompson at Meadowbrook Farm on County Road 15. Someone is trespassing on my property with heavy equipment and destroying my farmland. I need police here immediately." "Sir, are you in immediate danger? They're destroying my crops and equipment with bulldozers. This is criminal destruction of property happening right now. Units are on the way." I called my lawyer Jim next. "Jim, Becky Morrison is bulldozing my farmland right now with construction equipment. She claims she has legal authority, but all she has is some fake HOA document. Mark, whatever you do, don't try to physically stop them. Document everything with your phone camera. The police will handle this." I started recording video of the destruction while I waited for the police to arrive. The bulldozers had already torn up nearly 5 acres of my field. Decades of careful soil management were being destroyed in minutes. Becky stood watching the destruction with obvious satisfaction, directing the operators to tear up specific areas where my irrigation system was most extensive. "You should have been more cooperative," she called out to me. "This could have been resolved peacefully if you had just agreed to stop farming. Becky, you're going to prison for this. You're destroying private property based on fake legal documents. We'll see who goes to prison, Mr. Thompson." 20 minutes later, I heard sirens approaching. 3 sheriff's department cars pulled up to my field, followed by the fire department and an ambulance. Sheriff Martinez, who I'd known since high school, got out of the lead car and surveyed the scene with disbelief. "Mark, what the hell is going on here?" "Sheriff, that woman is Becky Morrison, president of the Willowbrook HOA. She's trespassing on my property with construction equipment and destroying my farmland. She claims she has legal authority, but she's using fake documents." Sheriff Martinez walked over to where Becky was standing with her clipboard and designer hard hat. "Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Martinez. I need to see your permits for this construction work." "Sheriff, I'm Rebecca Morrison, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. We're conducting authorized land reclamation on HOA property. Do you have permits from the county for earth-moving work?" "We don't need permits for work on our own property. Ma'am, according to our records, this is private farmland owned by Mark Thompson. Do you have documentation showing that this land belongs to your HOA?" Becky handed him the fake HOA resolution she had shown me earlier. Sheriff Martinez read it carefully, then handed it back to her. "Ma'am, this is not a legal document. This appears to be an internal HOA memo with no authority over private property. You're going to need to shut down this operation immediately." "Sheriff, I assure you that our legal research clearly establishes HOA ownership of this land. Mr. Thompson has been illegally farming property that belongs to our community. Ma'am, even if there was a legitimate property dispute, which there isn't, you can't just bring in bulldozers and start clearing land without court orders and proper permits. You're trespassing and destroying private property." Becky's confident expression started to crack. "I demand to speak to your supervisor. This is clearly a case where local law enforcement doesn't understand property law. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to order your construction crew to stop work immediately and remove their equipment from Mr. Thompson's property." "I will not. We have every right to be here." Sheriff Martinez signaled to his deputies, who began walking toward the bulldozer operators. "Shut down your equipment and step away from the machines," Deputy Johnson called out. The construction workers looked confused. They had been hired by Becky's contractor and had no idea they were participating in illegal activity. "Ma'am," the bulldozer operator called to Becky, "if there's a problem with permits, we need to stop work until it's resolved." "Keep working," Becky shouted. "I'm paying you to finish this job." "Actually," Sheriff Martinez said, "anyone who continues operating heavy equipment on private property without the owner's permission will be arrested for criminal trespassing and destruction of property." The construction workers immediately shut down their equipment and started walking away from the bulldozers. Becky realized she was losing control of the situation. "This is harassment of an elected community leader. I'm performing my duties as HOA president to protect property values and quality of life for hundreds of families. Ma'am, you're not elected to anything that gives you authority over private property outside your HOA boundaries. You're committing serious crimes here." Sheriff Martinez turned to me. "Mark, I need to ask, did you give permission for any of this construction work?" "Absolutely not. She's trespassing on my land and destroying my farm. I want her arrested." "Ma'am," Sheriff Martinez said to Becky, "you're under arrest for criminal trespassing, destruction of private property, and conspiracy to commit theft." Becky's face went completely white. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I was protecting community interests. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. This is insane. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the mayor. I'm calling the governor." As Sheriff Martinez handcuffed Becky, she continued shouting about her rights and threatening everyone with lawsuits. "I'll sue this entire county. You'll all lose your jobs over this. Do you know who my husband is?" "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Deputy Johnson arrested the construction foreman for conspiracy and operating equipment without permits. The other workers were questioned and released since they had just been following orders and didn't know they were participating in illegal activity. As Becky was loaded into the patrol car, she was still shouting threats and demanding to speak to higher authorities. "This isn't over, Thompson. The Willowbrook HOA will make sure you lose this farm. We have lawyers. We have money. We have political connections. Sheriff Martinez closed the car door, cutting off her rants. Mark, he said, I've never seen anything like this. She actually brought in bulldozers to steal your land based on a fake HOA document. Sheriff, they destroyed 5 acres of farmland and thousands of dollars worth of irrigation equipment. What happens now? She's going to face serious criminal charges. Destruction of property, trespassing, conspiracy to commit theft, and probably fraud for using that fake document. Her bail is going to be set very high because this was organized criminal activity. The news of Becky's arrest spread through the county like wildfire. By evening, reporters from 3 local TV stations were at my farm interviewing me about the HOA president who tried to bulldoze a family farm. The story went viral online. HOA Karen arrested for bulldozing family farm became a trending topic on social media. People from around the country were sharing the story and expressing outrage at Becky's actions. But the legal consequences were just beginning. My lawyer Jim filed civil lawsuits against Becky personally, the construction company, and the Willowbrook HOA for damages totaling $250,000. The destroyed crops, irrigation equipment, and soil remediation would cost more than I made in 2 years of farming. The district attorney's office charged Becky with multiple felonies carrying potential prison sentences of up to 10 years. The fake legal document she had used was considered fraud, and the organized nature of her crime made it conspiracy. Becky's husband, who was indeed a lawyer, immediately distanced himself from her actions. He issued a public statement saying he had no knowledge of his wife's illegal and misguided activities and would not be representing her in criminal court. The Willowbrook HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Becky as president. They also voted to settle my civil lawsuit quickly to avoid further legal exposure. Most importantly, the HOA passed a resolution formally acknowledging that they had no authority over any property outside their development boundaries and apologizing for the damage caused by their former president's criminal actions. Becky spent 3 days in jail before making bail. When she was released, she found that her entire life had been destroyed by her obsession with controlling my farm. The construction company she had hired was suing her for payment and damage to their reputation. Her insurance company refused to cover the damages from her criminal activities. Several Willowbrook residents were threatening to sue her personally for using their HOA dues to fund illegal activities. The local newspaper ran a series of articles about HOA overreach, using Becky's case as an example of what happens when neighborhood associations try to exercise authority beyond their legal boundaries. Becky became a symbol of everything people hate about HOAs. She received thousands of angry emails and phone calls from people around the country who had seen the news coverage. 6 months later, Becky pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for avoiding prison time. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, ordered to pay full restitution for the damage to my farm, and required to perform 500 hours of community service. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 1 mile of my property. Becky and her husband sold their house in Willowbrook and moved to another state. Before leaving, she had to pay me $175,000 in damages, money that allowed me to not only repair the destruction she had caused, but to expand and improve my farming operation. The new HOA president was a retired teacher named Mrs. Patterson who actually appreciated having a working farm next to their development. She said it gave the area character and connected residents to the agricultural heritage of our region. Some Willowbrook families started buying fresh vegetables and eggs from my farm. I began offering educational tours for their children, teaching them about farming and where their food comes from. What started as Becky's war against my farm became an opportunity to build real community connections between suburban residents and agricultural neighbors. The 50 acres that Becky had tried to steal became the most productive part of my farm. I used the settlement money to install a state-of-the-art irrigation system and plant specialty crops that sell for premium prices. I also put up a large sign at the entrance to that field, Meadowbrook Farm, established 1923. 4 generations of family farming. Every time I see that sign, I remember how close I came to losing everything because one person thought she had the right to control other people's property. Becky Morrison tried to bulldoze 500 acres of my family's farmland based on fake legal documents and pure arrogance. She thought she could intimidate a young farmer into giving up land that had been in his family for generations. Instead, she destroyed her own life and became a cautionary tale about what happens when HOA power goes unchecked. Her arrest at the scene of her crime was broadcast around the world as an example of how not to handle neighborhood disputes. My farm is stronger than ever, and I've learned that standing up to bullies, even ones with lawyers and bulldozers, is the only way to protect what matters most. The land my great-grandfather bought in 1923 is still in Thompson family hands, and it always will be.